Hey everyone, welcome to the Breath of the Wild Any% Speedrun commentated video. The function of this video is to explain all of the core mechanics of a Breath of the Wild Any% speedrun and to describe any glitches or strategies that aren't obvious to the outside viewer. This video won't really serve as a tutorial, so we won't get into how to do each trick or specific button presses. At the very least, you'll walk away with a better understanding of the route as it appears and the logic behind each decision. I think that should cover things, so let's get into it. First, most Any% runs you'll see will have the console and voice acting set to French. This is because of the opening dialogue after getting the Sheikah Slate. When you play in English or Japanese, the most common languages you see in speedruns, there's a long pause after Zelda's dialogue finishes that prevents you from advancing the text box. It's hard to say why that pause exists and why it doesn't appear in French or German, yet it saves about 4 seconds to switch your console language in the home menu. Now, since this is a speedrun, I know what you must be thinking. Aren't you skipping 90% of the game because of bug/glitch, then go finish the boss, then claim you finished the game in record time? This is an invalid playthrough? Full stop? Short answer, yes. Longer answer, no. For most games, an Any% run involves doing the minimum requirements to beat the game. Oftentimes, that can mean beating the minimum set of levels or beating every dungeon while ignoring the side quests. To be more granular in our analysis, an Any% run can mean identifying what we call event flags in the game and figuring out the fastest way to raise those flags, or determining which event flags are possible to skip using the logic of the game. Yes, there are some speedruns that can go straight to the credits with a complex set of glitches and movement, but that's pretty rare and not possible with all games. Specifically for Breath of the Wild, we must beat the tutorial section of the game before going to the end, which is 100% possible on any playthrough. The developers designed it to be that way. So let's ask ourselves which event flags need to be raised to beat this game. First, you need to acquire the Sheikah Slate. If you don't get the Sheikah Slate, you can't open the doors of the Shrine of Resurrection, raise the tower, open shrines, download runes, etc. It's simply not possible. While all of those are true, the only truly required flag to raise is downloading the rune abilities. Each ability allows us to finish their respective shrine, and each shrine completed allows us to gain the paraglider, and the paraglider being in your inventory allows you to leave the Great Plateau. But why can't you leave Plateau with flying and damage canceling glitches? At the start of the game, there is an invisible barrier, like a wall, surrounding Plateau to prevent you from escaping. There is also a constant in-game check to see if you have the paraglider in your inventory. If you somehow land on the ground below without dying and you don't have the paraglider, it doesn't matter where you go or what you do, the game will automatically void you back to the plateau eventually. This can be avoided with some very complex glitches to put the paraglider in your inventory on a new game file, but this isn't allowed in Any%. So we need to get the paraglider, but why isn't it important that you open the doors of the Shrine of Resurrection or raise the Great Plateau Tower? The only thing that happens when you watch the opening cutscene is it starts the time of day and weather cycles, and raising the tower in turn makes the other towers appear and shrines accessible by their front door. Luckily for us, we have other methods of getting past these supposed requirements. To leave the Shrine of Resurrection, it's possible to clip out of bounds by using this ledge and the scope function on the slate. You'll also notice that runners scope once before starting this trick. That removes the first time using the scope function animation that will prevent the clip from working. There are many angles that work for this clip. The trick is repeating what you do each time and to not lose precious seconds adjusting your angles. Unlike many other games, the walls and floor in Breath of the Wild have collision on both sides. This is fortunate because if we clipped out of bounds in another game, you would likely plummet into the void and that wouldn't help anyone. But it also means we need to find a way to clip back in bounds. This can be done by finding this big smudge on the ground up the hill, crouching under it, and just pressing B to stand up. Now, if you're paying close attention to the timer, you can see this run has been going on for over a minute, and this dude doesn't have any clothes or gear or anything. What a lame speedrun. And that's why we're going over to this Boko camp to steal one of their fashionable pot lids and spears, using whistle sprinting to maintain our speed as much as possible. We're also going to need a bow for some upcoming tricks to get to our first shrine. There is nearby a convenient chest with a bow inside, but standing in our way is a huge building we'd have to run around. This can be bypassed with what we call a skew clip. In this game, there's an oversight in the shield surfing mechanic that stores or remembers Link's previous angle during the shield surf animation. If you try to shield surf up a slope, Link will bonk and slide down, and the next time you try to do a shield surf, the game will reproduce the tilted angle of that slope. For regular play, this serves no purpose. For clipping through walls, however, it was found that if you get the right skew angle backward relative to the wall you're trying to clip through, and then force unequip the shield mid-jump, Link will pass through that wall during the skew frames and be on the other side. Furthermore, that skew angle will stay with Link indefinitely until you do something to remove it, like completing a shield surf animation or closing the game. Also, Link only needs to hit the front edge of his shield on the slope to obtain skew, which is why doing a shield jump onto this tiny ledge works for the run. If you're watching this video, I would assume you've almost certainly seen a BLSS or bow lift smuggle slide before. You may not, however, know what makes it work. Essentially, this glitch combines the B-lock glitch, which renders the B button inoperable and lets Link slide around in place, combined with smuggling an object with the bow to push Link through the air since him floating. If you watch carefully, it becomes apparent that when Link steps onto a ledge, he sort of gathers the object he's holding in front of him, which then pushes Link away from that ledge. What isn't very apparent from the outside is why speedrunners do this little shield jump before starting the first BLSS. This is because the first time you knock an arrow, the animation is a little bit different than subsequent times. For whatever reason, that makes Link drop the object he's holding over his head. Why? Hard to say. The good news is that it's easy to fix just by shield jumping in place and starting the trick like normal. We then use this small ledge to put Link in the step-up animation, hold B, and start wiggling the control stick like mad toward the bomb shrine. If you're wondering how speedrunners do this so quickly, there's a multitude of techniques. If you're fortunate to be left-handed or ambidextrous, BLSSing may come more naturally. I'd recommend trying some different techniques out to see what feels comfortable to you. As long as you don't let the control stick go neutral and always flick cleanly from left to right, you should have no problems. And here we are at the bomb shrine, ready to clip in quickly and without issue. Wait, this doesn't look right. Link is too high off the ground and will surely die without the paraglider. Luckily, there's an easy way to cancel fall damage by starting to throw a weapon, then equipping or unequipping your shield or weapon mid-throw. As we mentioned earlier, not raising the tower means the door of the shrine can't be opened. Ideally, you land from the BLSS right in front of the clip-in spot with the correct angle, so all you have to do is go straight into the shield flip. We use the same skew angle and clip from the Temple of Time, and then a second one to reach the elevator. Good thing the elevator is loaded in despite the fact we haven't activated the tower as intended, huh? What game would do that? Anyway, inside the shrine we download the bomb rune. You may be wondering if it's possible to reach the end of the shrine without the rune and skip this long cutscene. The answer is yes. However, the monk will tell you to go back and get the rune, so that makes each rune ability required. To get there quickly, many runners use a wind bomb, which is essentially a powerful damage boost that abuses the bullet time physics of this game. But before we do that, we have to talk about an inadvertent glitch we activated a few moments ago. This specific mechanic, intended or not, is called ragdoll glitch. Normally, if an enemy or object hits you, or you somehow blow yourself up with a bomb, like anyone would do that, Link goes flying through the air and tumbles around for a second, right? Well, ragdoll glitch prevents that entirely. A common misconception is that if you do a shield clip, you activate ragdoll glitch. This is incidentally the case. Any shield jump where you force unequip the shield mid-air will result in ragdoll glitch. The reason for this is because the game is unable to track Link's coordinates in the game, and that disrupts ragdoll mechanics somehow. It doesn't really make sense, I know, but it's something you need to be conscious of. Fixing the problem is as simple as intentionally damaging yourself or making Link fall over during a shield surf. For efficiency, we use another technique called ragdoll fix, which is done by doing another shield flip and unequip to temporarily reset our coordinates. It's sort of complicated how this fix works, and it's not guaranteed to work. If you want to know more about it, Bloom has a nice video experimenting with the glitch. Another small trick here is to let Link finish his shield flip animation during the fix, thereby removing your skew angle at the same time. We'll have to get a new skew angle to clip into the next shrine, so this kills two birds with one stone. But I digress. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, wind bombs. A wind bomb can be done in many ways, and there's a million videos on them. If you watch a lot of Breath of the Wild speedruns, you'll know that this specific wind bomb is called the gamer wind bomb, because yes, you do one hard wind bomb so that makes you a gamer, right? Right. This is done by delaying bullet time more than normal, and delaying detonation until you have about 2/3 of your stamina wheel left. If all the elements are correct, you should fly all the way to the monk. If you fail, however, and land on the lower portion of the shrine, it may mean instant death from fall damage, because for whatever reason this game calculates fall damage based on vertical distance traveled and not collision with walls horizontally. If we hadn't taken a half-heart damage from the cold at the start of the run, or grabbed some food by the bocos, there would be a chance of survival. But obviously those precautions are slow. And that puts an end to the first segment of any percent. Easy, right? Oh, and one small thing before we move on. You may have noticed that runners tend to hesitate before they skip the final cutscene. That's because if you wait until the text disappears, the game will actually load a lot faster than if you mash X right away. Notice how the loading bar starts right away on the left, while the other has yet to start. It gets there eventually, but you can see how bad it would be if this failed. From here, the old man is going to talk to us. For the purposes of saving some frames, runners choose the second, first, and second text box options. After that, it's amiibo time. Yes, the cheater toys. Why use these when a no amiibo category exists? Because runners love to have their runs determined by RNG, and resetting is fun. But also having some free food is going to help us out in a bit, and as long as you get one mighty porgy and a couple of mighty carps, you can make a good level 3 attack up meal. Also, it's just faster by default to get ingredients this way. To get to the Magnesis Shrine, the movement is pretty simple. Runners stand on this part of the wall ruins and step up on this ledge. You ideally get pushed in the direction of the shrine and wiggle like crazy to get to top speed as you arrive at the next skew spot. This one is sort of finicky because we not only need it to work for this shrine, we need it to work for stasis as well. Either way, it's a similar deal to the bomb shrine. Aim at a specific side of the shrine, then the elevator, and manipulate the camera to enter the shrine as early as possible. Now, you heard me scoff at the gamer wind bomb earlier. Well, Canal wind bomb is the actual gamer wind bomb in my opinion. We need to download Magnesis, of course, to move the metal doors and finish the shrine. We again do ragdoll fix to make sure the next wind bomb doesn't fail. The timing for Canal wind bomb is much tighter and specific than gamer wind bomb because you need to get enough height, distance, and angle to reach the monk area, and not die as you land on the other side. It's also one of the reasons why amiibo are so useful here. You can save yourself if you're going to land in the lower area. This strat saves over 10 seconds compared to just running through normally, so definitely worth it if you're going for a competitive time. After you gain control again, we'll be heading up to this outer wall to set up the next BLSS towards stasis. It's not technically high enough to clear the far ridge. Luckily, BLSS allows you to wiggle up a slope as long as it's not steep enough to force link into the climbing or slipping animation. For best results, runners stay on the dirt path and keep wiggling through the movement. If you go near the grass or stop wiggling, Link may get stuck and drop the bomb, which means climbing the nearby wall and starting the BLSS over. The goal is to get to this specific tree between the old man's cabin and the apple tree as quickly and directly as possible. Oddly enough, this wind bomb is one of the harder aspects of Plateau and is pretty easy to fail with slightly bad execution. For best results, it helps to press L and ZR at the same time almost immediately after jumping off the treetop, then delay dropping the square bomb a second later before immediately detonating. Where you aim isn't super important, but best to do the same thing each time for troubleshooting purposes. Apart from the previous skew clips, clipping into the stasis shrine doesn't really make sense as you watch it. Link tilts to the right and goes in despite going forward. This is only possible because of the shrine geometry allows it based on position and height. You may see people occasionally fail the first clip and hesitate before trying again. For whatever reason, this leads to more success than just furiously trying again. Inside stasis is maybe the easier of the previous wind bombs, or hardest depending on who you are. The goal is to get a low and straight wind bomb by having a specific initial angle and turning more to the right of that initial angle. There's also a strong possibility you miss the monk area entirely and plummet into the void. This one all depends on timing and angles, and a lot can go wrong, yet it saves a big chunk of time, so worth it once again. After stasis, we want to get up to the cliff above. There are two options here. Hit the boulder 7 to 8 times with the spear and use an arrow shot to angle its path upward and to the right, or do a walking wind bomb upward. This one is pretty tricky and risky. Normally, you'd do a targeted jump forward so that Link's animation and bullet time is more neutral and therefore easier for the bomb to collide with him. If you do a regular jump, Link's legs are split forward and backward, which means the bomb needs to collide with his crotch instead of his booty. Should you succeed in getting up the cliff this way, you need to heal to survive the cold and perform a wind bomb inside the Cryonis shrine. Before we get there, we need to do a very annoying BLSS setup that requires knocking down a tree and pushing the boulder down the ledge to clear a path. Then you simply steer a BLSS toward Cryonis and then stop just past the Boko camp. Optimally, you would do a bullet time bounce off a red bokoblin to reach Cryonis, which at this point is ancient tech in Breath of the Wild lore. It's still cool that it could be worked into the run if you're doing all the best strats though. The quickest way to enter Cryonis is with an extended shield clip, or ESC, which is a frame-perfect double shield clip. Now, that sounds intimidating, but you can buffer this trick with a quick menu. Since you can only buffer 2 frames at a time in this game, you need to choose the right set of frames to buffer. Once you see the frame after skew, you just need to hold ZL and A with a shield equipped and it should work. As this is our last shrine and we just entered through the door in one go, you might be asking why we don't use this method on each shrine if it's so fast. The answer is that ESC is less consistent than a regular shield clip, and the skew setup is much more specific. Maybe someday people will ESC into each shrine as a standard practice. Who's to say? Cryonis is without a doubt the easiest shrine. You simply need to clear ragdoll glitch and do a basic front hop wind bomb. The ideal circumstance is you bounce off the wall and land closer to the stairs. Saves a couple seconds. And at last, all we have to do is clear some dialogue boxes and BLSS our way to the Temple of Time, ideally throwing the spear during the fall damage cancel and shield flipping into the cutscene. So that's it. If all has gone well, you'll have finished Great Plateau in 13 minutes or less with a whopping 5 minutes of actual gameplay in there. Now it's time to finish the game. Surely a pot lid, traveler's bow, and 3 arrows are enough to kill Calamity, right? Maybe, but just to be safe we should pick up some other stuff first. Once the paraglider is ours, we need to reach Hyrule Castle quickly. How do you say? This might surprise you, but we're going to do a BLSS there. Shocking, right? Since that's basically all we've done so far. Although that seems simple, there's actually something pivotal that needs to happen here unless we want to kill this awesome pace we're on. Our plan is to enter the front gate of the guard chamber and get a couple of strong weapons. The problem is that this gate is automatically closed and can only be opened from the inside with a switch. Since this is a seamless open world game, it is possible to reach areas of the overworld before certain assets load in, like enemies, shrines, or movable parts. Our main issue with this route is that there isn't a consistent method to make certain the gate doesn't load in before we arrive, other than to try and get there as soon as possible. Another big issue, one that we haven't yet encountered, is that Breath of the Wild technically has a speed cap. It's hard to say what function a speed cap serves in casual play, as it's impossible to reach the highest speed threshold without glitches. What I assume is that it's related to a mechanic called ragdoll recovery. If you say, tumble off a mountain, it would be unpleasant if it was like real life and you had no choice but to fall to your death each time. Essentially, if you ragdoll too much or too quickly, the game has a way of letting Link snap out of it and get back on his feet. You can see this sometimes when you get a wind bomb with too much base speed. How the speed cap factors into BLSS is that it's possible to build up infinite speed by just flicking the control stick. Doing so pushes Link to speeds over 230 kilometers per hour, which tells the game, in essence, Link is moving too fast and therefore must stop. So what you'll see players do is build up speed until the light trail of the bomb becomes a solid stream, or the cursor on the minimap pushes out of the center too much. Should the gate load in, all hope isn't lost. It is, but we'll pretend it isn't. It is possible to ESC into the space above the gate and then slowly drop through the ceiling textures above the entrance. Loses a handful of seconds if done very quickly, so could keep a run alive on life support. However, we now have a problem. Can you guess what? That's right! We have ragdoll glitch again. And for the upcoming wind bombs, that's going to be a big problem, so it's best to trip over your shield now so it isn't a problem later. If all goes to plan, you'll enter the guard's chamber before the interior textures are loaded in. This can be a bit challenging, but as long as you use enemies as visual cues of where the hole in the wall is, you can hop through without having to wait. In this room, we're going to grab a couple of powerful swords. The best way to do so is to headshot the moblin before he notices you to distract him, grab the Royal Claymore behind the moblin, which equips automatically because we have no weapon at the moment, then sneak striking the moblin before the Hyrule Castle cutscene starts. Next, we grab the Royal Guard's Claymore, which doesn't have great durability but does a whopping 72 damage per hit. After that, we're going to run up these stairs and not get killed by the Lizalfos. I said not get killed by the Lizalfos, and run down the hall to a secret room. It's important here to avoid whistle sprinting as to not alert the Lizalfos up the stairs, using throw sprinting instead. In this chamber are 3 ancient arrows which do critical damage to Calamity and other enemies controlled by Malice. After that, we alert the Lizalfos up the stairs by running toward them, then distract him with a bomb so that he can be one-shot with a sneak strike. This gives you a strong boomerang for certain small sections of the boss rush, and helps us break Thunderblight's shield in Phase 2. Killing the Lizalfos also lets us use the cooking pot he was guarding to make our attack-up meal. Now for the really scary part. We're going to clip out of bounds and do a mid-air wind bomb up to Zelda's room. There is an alternate route here that stays in bounds and collects 3 more ancient arrows. Having this makes Calamity much easier and only loses a small amount of time. To be fastest, however, we need to squeeze out that extra time save and try to finish the game perfectly. These out-of-bounds wind bombs can be a bit tricky. This area has a lot of things going on, and the frame rate drops considerably during bullet time. Too much lag during bullet time and a wind bomb is sure to fail. With some practice and understanding, you should be able to reach the roof of the hallway to the north, then up this doorway to the west. Like the beginning of the run, we'll crouch under the floor textures and pop back in bounds. Then distract the moblin with a bomb so that you can sneak strike him and take his Edge of Duality. There's also a Royal Guards bow on the mantle and a small bundle of arrows. So that puts us at 4 powerful swords, 3 ancient arrows, and 8 or so normal arrows. Is that really enough to beat the game? Just barely. Those who are really good at the game will have no food in their inventory at this point besides the attack-up meal. It has to be eaten now for the final wind bomb up to Sanctum, which will make timing very tight if the attack-up buff is going to work through the whole boss rush. The best place to wind bomb from is a ledge just above Zelda's room and puts you at a specific door for a trick called Spawn Snipe. Fun fact. Major bosses who are introduced with a cutscene all have active hitboxes during their respective cutscenes. If you were to somehow throw a weapon or shoot an arrow into the correct spawning position of each boss just as the cutscene plays, you could technically kill each boss before each fight even starts. At the moment, we only have a way of killing Windblight this way, and Calamity if he's the only boss left to defeat in the game. There's also an infinite ways of executing Spawn Snipe, but we'll just focus on the current fastest one, which has you step up on this pillar, step down, and then aim at a specific spot, fire an arrow, and walk into the cutscene. It's worth noting also that the Royal Guard bow and attack-up meal is required for this setup. It fires faster and straighter than a conventional bow, and will therefore lodge an arrow in Windblight's face as the cutscene starts. If you see his head shaking repeatedly, then the trick worked. That's 1 boss down. Next is Waterblight, who we take down pretty easily with the Edge of Duality. In this game, there's a slight oversight in how spin attacks with 2-handed weapons work. There's a small range behind Link that can register 2 hits at a time, and we use this to ideally get 3 hits per spin on Waterblight, 1 to the hand and 2 to the body. The next phase is a simple matter of damaging him down with the boomerang and body shots before headshotting him off the ceiling. You then finish him with double hits in a similar fashion to phase 1. Fireblight goes down in a similar way. 3 hits and a slam attack stuns him, then the Royal Guard Claymore finishes the cycle due to the sheer amount of damage it deals. Phase 2 is a question of getting a bit lucky. Sometimes Fireblight pops up quickly after getting bombed to the ground and then teleports away. It's unfortunate, but it happens. To make sure to finish the cycle quickly, we throw the boomerang at Fireblight to deal a few hits, then try to finish him off with double hits and the Royal Claymore. Should it fail, you just pick up the boomerang and take care of the rest. If the strat does succeed, you leave the boomerang behind until the start of Thunderblight Phase 2. Now I know Thunderblight is scary, but if you follow the plan, he's no big deal. First we rush him and break his shield with 2 hits, then stun him with a slam attack, using a weapon throw to send him into Phase 2. With our trusty boomerang in hand, we break the shield as he calls lightning rods down from the ceiling. The reason you use a boomerang is because it does multiple hits at once and therefore breaks his shield. If you threw a regular sword, he would simply block it. Last move is to knock him down with a headshot, and finish him off with more double hits. All of the weapon routing is based on conserving durability to its maximum. 1 wrong move and it could mean the end of the run. And now it's time for the big boy himself. Mr. Bearded Laser Spider makes his grand appearance. What are we going to offer him in this troubling time? A flurry rush in his face should work. Doing a flurry rush also baits him into a slam attack, allowing us to run to the edge of the arena to grab some other weapons. This will also induce a laser attack if done right to give you more time to reach the edge of the arena. But be careful, the splash damage of the laser hitting the wall could kill you. Under Naboris, you'll find a bundle of 10 bomb arrows, which will auto-equip because we're currently out of arrows, and further to his right is another Royal Claymore. Now, this is very important. You must use all of your remaining arrows, and they must be headshots. Missing one headshot could spell disaster in Phase 2. As you rain headshots on Calamity from a distance, he will try to shoot you with a laser. You then parry it to stun Calamity, making it possible to do a spin attack with the Royal Guard's Claymore, then throwing the Claymore into him, doing a critical hit. Now it's time for those ancient arrows. You'll notice just how a few headshots cuts his health down considerably. This is because the Royal Guard's bow does 50 damage times 2 for headshot with critical damage added because of the arrow type. The ancient arrows also stun lock Calamity, so in actuality, if you had a bunch of ancient arrows, you could finish the first cycle without him getting off a single attack. The last couple of bomb arrows will end Phase 1, and ideally your bow will shatter on the last shot. Now it's time for a bit of RNG. As long as you missed no headshots, the likelihood of Calamity going to the wall at the start of Phase 2 is pretty low. He may run from you right away, and you'll be forced to parry him off the wall. This is scary because the attack up food is running low and may disappear before you can finish the fight. But we're perfect and never make mistakes, right? Right. Which means Calamity will instantly try a laser attack, which we can parry back at him. This breaks his invincibility shield and leaves him vulnerable to a stun lock. This next part is by far the scariest part of any percent. Stun locking Calamity is a normal mode thing only, and is done by hitting him at least 3 times with a strong weapon, then slam attacking him just as he gathers up to reform his shields. There's a fairly generous frame window to stun lock Calamity, but under pressure it can be a nightmare. For speed, you also need to do optimal damage while making sure to conserve your stamina. Practice runners will usually never have an issue with this part. There's no RNG to worry about, and managing your stamina is 100% under your control. Again, there's just enough durability on the edge of Duality and Royal Claymore to pull this off. After Calamity is down, there's a bit of RNG on how fast the next fight starts. Sometimes you lose a couple seconds to loads here. It sucks, but is what it is. The optimal strat here is to pick up the Bow of Light, which will auto-equip since our bow shattered during the last fight, then stay in front of Dark Beast Ganon to sidestep his laser. It will mean he stays still for when the first weak points appear. It is possible to hit the first weak spot just as they appear, which can skip Zelda's dialogue. This is called Speechless and saves literal frames, and while it doesn't transform your run, it is a nice flex. This can also be done on the next phases if you time things well. Again, not talking about a lot of time, but every second helps. One last shot to the eye and the run is over. As things stand, there aren't a lot of optimizations to make. That doesn't mean there won't be any, as the nature of speedruns is to change over time. But that's it for us right now. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.